Welcome to episode 14, 8mm lo-fi chit chat. I guess this is our Eric, are we doing a show quarterly now? Is that what life has reduced us to?
Yeah, this is our quarterly 8mm heresy podcast.
Yeah. I think we recorded in fucking August last time.
Yeah. I had not gone to Nova when we last recorded.
Not only that, I mean, oh God, that's bad. That is bad. Yeah, Eric, I think life happened real quick. We'll get into that in a second, but yeah, this has been a challenging year for getting episodes out. We'll get into that and what we've been up to, and I swear we're not going to be like trauma dumping on you guys or anything, but we got to just clear the deck so we can start talking about 8mm glory. So for this episode, last night, man, thank God you were just trolling around on Discord and put something in, and I kind of just dropped it half as a joke. We have Josh, SC Josh. I was gonna say you're better known as the independent character.
Did you just lose Brian?
I think Brian just shit the bed. Yep.
I just shit the bed.
Yeah.
Right, am I back?
Mid names. Yeah. I got you now.
Yep, you're back.
Oh, now. Motherfucker. Okay, well, I might edit that out.
Enjoy editing.
Enjoy editing. Well, I'll start over on the intro view. Joining us, we have a third chair. The guy I probably get the most games in with because he lives close to my work and the schedule's just kind of aligned as far as that go, and his dog seems to like me. We have Josh from, I was going to call you the specialist correspondent for the independent characters, but you're just the co-host.
Just on there now, but still have the specialist games bias for sure.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there are no like permanent contracts with Carl, so guy rules with an iron fist. Well, it's good stuff. Yeah, Josh, thanks for coming on. I mean, you are of the guys in our group. You are the 8mm guy. So
you guys are definitely speaking my language with this episode. So happy
yes.
to join you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and just as a warning and a heads up, man, we've had a rough run. So in this episode, you're probably going to hear like swishing water and stuff like that. Like we are just straight up painting and hobbying, and there's actual show notes and all that sort of a thing. But this is just, we are having a chat and enjoying all that is 8mm. So Eric, man, you went to Nova. I forgot that was the thing since the last time we recorded. How did that go for you?
Yeah, so I went to Nova. This is now a distant memory, but it is technically what happened since we last recorded. That was great. Let's see. I played an extremely heresy focused sort of lineup. So we did Centurion, which is essentially just infantry heresy. That was great. I had a great time with that. Imperial fists are really good at 1,500 points when it's all just infantry.
They are.
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of bolter drill. Tartarus Terminators with 3-up invulnerable saves continue to just be amazing. And as per usual, everybody learns how the best defense reaction works the first time those Terminators are suddenly charging you in your movement phase. So yeah, that was good times. Did pretty well there. Went to the Adeptus Titanicus event. There were two events. There was a 2,000 point event and a 3,000 point event. I'm very, very thankful that they did the 3,000 point event first and in the evening. So I was actually cogent for it. The 2,000 point event was a little bit rough. That went so-so. The 3,000 point version, I sort of cobbled together a list for that. So it was like my 2,000 point list plus a Warmaster, which, spoiler, we'll talk about that later. And it was okay. I fought, the first game was against Dan Osborne's much more coherent 3,000 point force, and he just eviscerated me. It was a great game. It was a ton of fun, but I was wildly outclassed the whole time. But then had a couple really good games with folks. Titanicus remains God's most perfect game.
Yes.
And so that was a lot of fun. And then played a little Battlefleet Heresy. Battlefleet Auspex Return made another appearance. Played a genuinely good game, following the normal old school I go you go rules with a Mechanicus player. That was a lot of fun. He took a face full of torpedoes turn 1 and then outplayed me for the objective. It's a sort of slow but very majestic game where 2 of us were playing against somebody with a very large fleet. I managed to mostly hide while my Mechanicum buddy got his teeth kicked in. And then the third game was with Alex Self, where we were told by the organizers, here's your mission. Here's how many points you should play. And we said, yeah, we're not going to do either one of those things. We're just going to take our whole fleet out and just have a cruiser clash, but with everything we've got. That was great. We played until 3:30 in the morning. We were the only people left in the event hall. They had packed up the terrain, so we had put several bottles of extremely sweet flavored liqueurs that Alex had bought down as various impassable things. That was both a stroke of genius and a mistake. And so that was, I believe, Battlefleet Heresy played in its truest form, exhausted, drunk, and alone. And it was amazing. As I think you put it, Brian, at the end of that, the summation was space is on fire.
Shit's on fire, yo.
Shit's on fire, yo. A lot of cruisers were dead. Anything with an escort profile had died hours ago. It was a really good time.
I remember waking up at 4:30 or 5, and you guys had barely finished your game, right?
Yeah.
And I remember just seeing the pictures. There was a banana liqueur, and it was just, as soon as you started talking about Nova, I was like, why do I taste my own vomit in my mouth? And I'm like, oh, that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
The
basically, if you imagine a banana split with peanuts sprinkled on top, we had the liqueur to affect all of those flavors, and did attempt that. So yeah, it was funny that in 3 games of Battlefleet Heresy, Alex went from I don't drink to what happens when we mix these. So I'm sorry, but I'm also
that escalated quickly.
that escalated extremely quickly. And then I was supposed to play. Death Ray Designs has a sort of mech game called Steel Rift that I was supposed to play the next morning. I went ahead and bowed out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have been bowing straight into the porcelain god at that point. That's
I was sort of curled up in a ball in my hotel room while that event was going on.
Were those narrative events you're in for Titanicus, or was it more competitive oriented?
So they were narrative. They all had missions and stuff like that. The last mission was great fun. They have a capture the flag mission where you literally have a Titan-sized flag and you're trying to capture it.
Awesome.
And they have rules for if you have a power fist, you can just try to grab your opponent's flag. Which
look at that.
Very, very coolly, the guy I was playing, I got up against his flag carrier and he's like, you can just grab it. They have rules for that. And I was like, oh shit, they do. And that is what happened. Is I essentially grabbed his flag and then he hit my power fist with a melter cannon. So we decided what happened is it just melted around the flag, and so now it's just permanently embedded there. So yeah, they're really good narrative missions. There was there's only 1 or 2 missions there where I think they got a little carried away, and the mission got a little bit in the way of the actual game. But for the most part, they're all at least semi-narrative and had really fun sort of objectives and things like that attached to them.
Nice.
Yeah.
The guys who run Nova do a great job.
Yeah, man. I need to get out there one year. And I mean, that year is going to be 2038, but I need to get out there. Well, only thing, I mean, Josh, you already talked. I mean, you talked about this. I don't even know how many episodes ago. Christ, but we both went to that G3 Titanicus event up in Chico. Second weekend of November, I think.
Yeah, I think it was second.
Yeah. We went up there, and Well, we both went to the same place. We didn't go together like we were supposed to. My wife didn't quite understand. I want to leave before traffic happens on a Friday to drive a quarter of the length of California.
Holiday weekend Friday.
Yeah, somehow that didn't register. Like in my mind, I was like, I'm leaving the house at 9. I'm going to carpool with some guys. I'm actually going to see humanity a little bit, and that did not work out. And I turned how long is it? Like 3-hour drive. I turned a 3-hour drive into I think it was 6 when I was done. It wasn't good.
I think, it's 3.5 on a good day.
Yeah.
None of us made it there in 3.5 hours because it was not a good day, but yours was exceptionally not good.
Yeah, I thought it when I got onto the Google Maps, it was like, you should drive through San Francisco. And I was like, wow, now that's a different route, but Google must know something I don't know. And then as soon as I hit traffic, I just started watching the estimated time, it was like getting run over in slow motion, but anyways, got up there. I mean, you already talked about this. If you want to hear a more in-depth thing, they had Killian Volk, the guy that runs it, on the independent characters. They can talk about the whole event, but the upshot on it was a 2,000 point event. And so I thought, man, I want to take something that requires low brain power. So I took at 2,000 points, that extra 250 like really opens things up in a weird way. And I thought, you know what? I was supposed to take my Iconoclast last year, didn't finish it. It's done this year. I'm going to take that and a minimum size Corsair. And we'll get into this when we go the tail end of the thing. We'll introduce topics here in a minute, but towards the tail end of the thing we're going to be talking about, the Warmaster and the Iconoclast as Titans and how you use them and that sort of a thing. And I kind of ran into I believe you would call this a dumpster fire matchup. I can't even remember the guy's name because our game was so short. I got tabled after 3 turns. It was real quick. I remember we walked up and I looked at his list and I'm like, ooh, that's an activation advantage for sure, which, I was expecting, because I only have four activations total. And the guy was playing an Astorum list with 2 minimum size, I think it was Ferox. He was playing the light maniple where it's a Corsair or a Reaver and 2 Warhounds. He had 2 of those and then an auxiliary Warhound that had, Quake Cannon, Volcano Cannon, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, this will be a little rough, but you know what? I'm just going to get in his grill right off the bat. And I hadn't read the mission pack and I was like, oh, we have like a set of stratagems we can use. So I can't use the whole warp displacement thing. That's fine. I'll make it work. Yeah. And then once we started setting up, I looked at the board and I was like, I have to go across Planet Bowling Ball in the middle. And it just didn't go well. The guy played it super smart where we were supposed to like sit on objectives and he just backed up and gave me something close enough to tempt me into like shooting at something because I knew I wasn't going to make it across the board. And at the end of the game, I killed a single thing. I charged a Warhound with an Iconoclast, which is, we'll get into the math later, is not a fair trade-off. And
but you better the shit out of it.
Yeah, but you made it count. You did it
well,
with
and
style.
Here's the thing. I barely killed it too. Like the matchup wasn't great. The table didn't do me any favors, but my dice really did not. I mean, I was failing saves left. I mean, like my Iconoclast lost shields first turn.
Yeah,
to not a lot of shooting. So
I think we had very similar experiences that day.
Yeah. Our first round went pretty quick, and my brother was in town from out of state. He lives in Utah, and so I kind of had to get out of there faster than I wanted to. But just getting out and getting to play with those guys and see the event and everything, it was just a lot of fun. And I got to hang out with you and Carl a little bit, and shit talk. What were we shit talking about? Was it Applebee's that we had to go to or something like that by the time I got there?
It was the only thing open, I think it was Applebee's, or maybe it was TGIF. Something like that. They're all the same.
Whatever the fuck. 6 of one, half a dozen the other.
Don't exist in Santa Cruz.
Yeah. So I mean that's basically the one event type thing that I got to go to, and I was I was fortunate to get to go because my father-in-law died a couple weeks before it, which is part of the reason why we haven't had episodes and things like that. It's just kind of it's been a bit of a shit show. But Josh, you got something besides that event, or do you want to give like a brief recap of your also painfully short game?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. Yeah, similarly, there had kind of I'll first state this by saying the train was absolutely gorgeous and amazing, but it wasn't
Yeah,
necessarily the best for gameplay. At least
yeah,
I also brought kind of a wackadoo list where I had 3 warlords and a
yeah,
reaver,
yeah,
and I lost shields on my reaver in my deployment zone turn 1 due to first fire before I'd even be able to like activate it.
yeah.
And it's similar, like, 8 hits, and okay, I have 3 up save rerolling 1s for void shields, and I'm gonna roll 6 2s, like shields are down.
Flub them. Yeah.
And that's kind of how my dice went the rest of the game. Yeah, when your opponent's apologizing you for the results of your dice the entire
For your
game,
own
like,
dice.
yeah, how that game's gonna go.
Right.
Mission wise, the inspiration for those missions was very 5th edition focused, where it's kind of the objectives are key, but the objectives don't really matter until the end of the game,
Yeah.
which for me, I think is honestly, I've thought about it a bit more since the event, but I think it's a
Yeah.
slight miss in not having stuff score more progressively throughout the course of the game to
Yeah.
incentivize
Yeah.
movement and not castling up in
Yeah.
the corner, things like that, especially
Yeah.
on tables that don't have kind of that kind of line of sight blocking terrain.
Yeah.
The cover was light, but again, the terrain was absolutely gorgeous and so thematic and well done, but not
Yeah.
necessarily the best for game mechanics at the same time. Yeah, but still had a super fun game, even though it was over in I think 2.5 hours maybe at most for a 2,000 point
Oof.
game. So
Yeah.
yeah, very very short, sweet, fun. Got some great Thai food afterwards and had a good time just hanging out and talking Titanicus with a bunch of dudes up there.
I hadn't thought about the mission thing, and that absolutely is true. Because like the guy that I was playing with, he had no incentive to go forward. He was like,
Yeah,
I can just back up,
yeah,
castle up, shoot you. And it wasn't like he was like abusing the mission. I mean, the mission just encouraged that, and like
right. Yeah,
the other thing on the mission thing and this is something that I this is actually feedback. I forgot to pass this on, and I should pass this on, is that the other thing that was a little wacky on it was the random deployment zone. Like, we had our sides established because it was like traders are over here, loyalists are there, just to for ease of everything. But then when you also, like, I rolled one where it was like I really got boxed in to a small area, with not that
yeah,
many models, but it forced me to, if I wanted to get to them, to just go straight through no man's land with anything. And I think, to me, I think that was a little bit of a miss, because you could really quick look at look at the table and the matchup and determine it really quick. You know what I'm saying? Like that, it adds an extra layer, but that can help sort of offset and mitigate that can mitigate like thin terrain. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
if there's a
yeah.
matchup where it doesn't work out, you can say, okay, or if you look at somebody and they have a ton of stuff and you get like the little dinky box one or whatever, or to just, it's going to lead to some sort of a weird situation like that. That's the thing I think that could get tweaked just a little bit. But I mean, the terrain and the atmosphere and the way they put things on, I mean, the little goodie bag that they throw at you with tons of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it was
The
just an awesome
presentation
event.
and production value is top notch. But yeah, absolutely. Having deployments assigned based upon the table setup for each of those different 4x4 areas or the 4x6 games
Yeah.
does make a bit more sense than some of the random ones. Yeah, I do agree on that.
Yeah. Um yeah, other than that, I mean, I mentioned the thing with my father-in-law dying. We've just had it's been a rough fall period all around. And Eric, I remember you were showing the number of miles that you've had to travel for work this year. I mean, this is why we have
Yeah,
the tale of
yeah.
two hobby bingo cards.
I posted this on the Hobby Progress channel for like where is Eric's bingo card, and the answer
Mhm.
is it's 63,000 miles on Alaskan Airlines. And then
Jesus.
presumably some others in there that didn't get captured, and then yeah, I had a dog pass away and some other stuff. So it's been a
Yeah.
rough fall for both of us, I think, and both of us have been like, do you want to record? Followed by like, not really, or
Yeah.
in my case, like, sure, I'm in Europe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been a lot of travel this fall. I slightly overshot how much travel I did for work. Essentially, I did what I normally did and then got invited to several things that it would professionally be very awkward to say no to.
Yeah.
And the combination of those two pushed me over the edge a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does next year look for you? I like how we're just like managing podcasting business right in the middle of
Yeah,
of
like
giving you
how does
shit.
next year look? So
Yeah.
that's a good question. It's got to be better because this was unsustainable. And
Yeah.
as my wife put it, yeah, you don't really live here anymore, and I got to fix that.
Right.
So we're gonna dial that down a bit. I'm generally speaking more available in the spring than the fall. I have tagged out of teaching this next semester. I was going to teach a class, and I was just like, guys, I can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're trying to be more available in the future. Partially because I miss hobby stuff, and I would like to paint some of the things I've bought. There's
Yeah.
little tiny dudes to paint, and I would like to paint those before everyone else's enthusiasm for that game has waned. So yeah,
Right.
that the goal is to be more available this coming year.
Cool. Well, I know in January I'm going to be available because in 4 days I'm having knee surgery. So I'm going to be on my ass and not doing much for at least a week or a few days at least. So my kids think that the crutches are something that you can play with, and I'm like, no, dad's going to need those to walk pretty soon. So you guys need to let's put that shit down. So
Let's not break those a couple days before knee surgery, please.
now, before we go into our topics, a million things have happened. They've released Legions Imperialis, blah, blah, blah. A million things have come out. Like, I just glazed over that real quick. The one thing I do want to talk about, and, oh, God. So, in the Titanicus, or in the Legions Imperialis box, you get 2 Warhounds. And there are a lot of people that really don't want 2 more Warhounds. And for a guy who has stuff that he needs to get rid of that other people might want, and wants to do the Ember Wolves, 2024 is looking good for me. What's looking even better though is they finally, I was waiting. It was kind of weird. You guys mentioned, like, I only saw it because people sent it to me, but they just kind of like snuck in the rules for the new weapons that are on the plastic sprue. And guys, we need to talk. These, if I wasn't already tempted by an abundance of available Warhounds that people are trying to offload, these weapons just make the Ember Wolves that much more playable. I want to start with the one that I'm the least excited about, and then work gradually up to I need to call a hazmat team and a drywall contractor. So we have a 25, a 10 point, and a 20 point weapon. The one that I'm not as excited about, but it's still useful, right? They have a Warhound arm, 20 points for shutter missiles. Short range 12 inches, long range 40 inches. No penalties at any range. 2 dice, strength 6, and it has barrage and quake. I'm saying I'm not as excited about this one. I think it's because the other types of missiles are a lot cheaper, and I can see I think they're going to be easier to use. But what are your guys' thoughts on?
For sure.
Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on the barrage and quake? I mean, barrage with 2 shots is it gets real iffy real quick. But if you have like a squadron if you're running, a squadron of like 3 of these or something like that, that's a thing. What do you guys think?
The nice thing on barrage on Warhounds is they are so hideable that you can definitely
Yeah.
get some fun quake shots without line of sight at all. Because barrage lets you get around that. You're not going to hit very well, and the fact that you only have 2 dice to do it means it's going to be pretty situational when it really pays dividends. But yeah, quake and being able to shoot out of line of sight at range. The thing that excites me about this is it really makes some long range Warhounds a viable option, but it also makes some very short range suicide dogs also very fun to play.
I think with the shutter missiles, I had originally thought of barrage in like the way you normally think about it with like apocalypse missile launchers, where you're like, oh, okay, so your opponent's going to try to hide something, and then I had that same thought. I was like, wait, I can hide too. Like it's you don't need line of sight on both ends.
Right.
I think the shutter missiles are a weapon where you know you need them or you don't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I think Quake gives you the opportunity for a lot of like messing with people's mobility games and things like that. But like strength 6 and 2 dice, you can't really rely on it. So you're gonna need to have these in volume.
Mhm.
But I feel like there are like certain people who play certain other people who are like, oh hell yes. Anything where like your opponents say converted their titans, so they're holding two like massive corn demon axes. Quake's gonna be nice because you're gonna want to slow that shit down. So I
Yeah.
think there's definitely a place for them, but I think it's definitely a niche weapon where you're like, oh yeah, we can take shutter missiles, great. Whereas the other two are just like slot very neatly into like, oh yeah, so I should take this.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I guess even for stuff that's out in the open, I mean, shooting at nights with Quake is always a good time. Um, yeah, I'm just not as excited about those. Let's now Swarmer missiles for 10 points. I am all over this like stink on a monkey. This is this is my jam. 12-inch range. They're -1 to hit at 12 inches and under. 40 inches at long range. 5 dice, strength 4, and it has rapid. I am the I mean, because at 10 points, I mean, in a shield stripping role, this is competing with like a Vulcan Mega Bolter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But twice the range.
Yeah. This is
Yeah, this is you've lost the dice, and in exchange, you got 2 more turns of shooting.
Yeah.
right.
And I think that's a pretty good deal.
I
That's
personally
that,
really am happy how they have counterbalanced the two, with the Vulcan Mega Bolter being very short range and getting the bonus at even shorter
right.
range at 8 or less inches, where this has a penalty at under 12 inches, but gets you
Yeah.
up to 40. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you just wanted a dog that could always strip shields, you could go Swarmer Missiles and a Vulcan Mega Bolter, and you're always viable no matter the range, but kind of not ideal either way. But this one really opens up some options with, say, the Turbo Laser Destructor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Big
think it
time.
gives a
With
laser
Swarmer Missiles.
destructor
Yeah.
warhound the ability to sort of act on its own to
Yeah.
like both
Mhm.
strip shields and be able to sink shots once it does that. Uh have something that you a ranged warhound that you don't have to buy 2 turbo laser destructors for, and suddenly your war gear costs as much as your Titan does.
Right.
Right.
I think it's a good cheap option. I think you're right, Josh. It does have a really nice. This is for stripping shields. You can't do the thing you do with Vulcan Mega Bolters, where towards the end of the game, you're like targeting shots, and you're like, sure, I hit on 5s, but I've got 12 shots with 2 of these. I'm gonna do something. The swarm missiles don't really have that role, so I think there's still definitely a place for Vulcan Mega Bolters, but
Yeah.
the idea of warhounds as like support titans and being able to just sort of lob shots with these and then run away because they're cowardly fast little titans is really good. And I think, Brian, as you mentioned, if you're playing the Ember Wolves or something like that, uh congrats, you now get to play the first 2 turns of the game. And
Right.
you get to interact with your opponent and strip shields and things like that in a way that I think warhound heavy lists. And I think that was one of the things. I've been pushing Titanicus to the local club recently. I've had a couple intro games with people, and like a good 75% of the people who are interested in the game are like, can I just run warhounds? And like it's like, yeah, but it's a little bit harder. I
Yeah.
think it's a lot more viable to be like, yeah, like go nuts.
Yeah.
Well, and that said though, I mean, I in in doing the Ember Wolves, I see myself getting my ass kicked a lot for a while. Like that is going to be tricky to play, but man, it's the Brian Harvey special where it's like, yeah, but when it works, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a level of temptation that I can't get around.
You're
Uh,
contractually obligated to play a few games that you only have Ursus Claws equipped on all your Titans across the board. Nothing else. No shot glances, only Ursus Claws.
Only Ursus Claws.
yeah, somebody's got to do it, and that it's me.
That's what magnets are for.
Your mission objective is just to drag down a warlord. That's the only thing. Like, if you do that, you win. You can go home. All your Titans can be dead. Doesn't matter.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, hey, speaking of which, all my stuff dead. This thing is going to get me into way more trouble, and I don't give a shit. This is a pricey boy. 25 points for the Incisor Patterned Melt-a-Lance. Short range, 6 inches, no penalty. Long range, 10. -1 to hit. 2 dice, strength 9, and it has fusion. You can fuck yourself with this thing in so many ways, but when it does work, holy shit. I am all about this thing.
That's the backdoor special. Get that +2 rear strike out of arc, strength 11 base plus a D10 for fusion.
Yeah, I was about to say that this is one of those weapons where for 3 games you're never going to shoot it.
You're right.
And then there's going to be one game where you get behind a warlord and under its shields, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm automatically critting your reactor. Good luck. So yeah, I think this is deeply tempting because I do have a Warhound that is equipped with a Vulcan Mega Bolter and a Flamer. That's just like, that is a bad loadout. But somehow, like, just playing it with insane aggression seems to work out for me. And this is just like, oh, there's a weapon for that.
Yep.
Like,
either two Melt-a-Lances or a Mega Bolter and a Melta. And if you put that in a Squadron 2 and it's the second thing to shoot, then you're just like, oh, here's +1 in addition to that. So yeah, it's tempting. Tasty. It's pricey, and there's going to be games where you never shoot it, but I'm building a Warhound with one.
But you're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance. And when it works, it's going to be so satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I am super excited that they did these in plastic, and I am super excited there are a lot of people that are either see the Warhounds as bait, like they're like, nope, I'm not getting sucked into another game. And locally, it seems like we have that, or we have people that are, I have 5 painted Warhounds. I don't need 7, in that situation. Mm-hmm. So
I've got my 5 already. So my new 2, Brian, are all yours.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the plastic. I'm going to keep the weapons. You can have the Ursus Claws and Shock Lances though, but
yeah, I'm all over that.
And I think it's also tamped down a little bit on the folks who are like, so Titanicus is dead. And I'm like, well, I mean, you have all the cards for the new weapons. So like they are making. Yeah. And I mean, so my answer to that usually is that, like, in my mind, Titanicus is a feature complete game. Like, if tomorrow they said, all right, we're wrapping it up, I'd be like, okay,
I'm good with
like,
that.
Cool. I'm going to play Titanicus for the next 10 years.
But ironically, I think they're actually supporting it kind of more proactively now with the reboxing of the Titans for Legion Imperialis, because now those kits are coming with terminals and cards, which they never did before. So it's actually easier to get into Titanicus than it really ever has been.
Yeah.
Wow. That's super first one's free territory.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's definitely, like, you can play this other game. if you continued to buy our plastic Titans, you could have more fun with them.
Just saying. Yeah, so I'm excited about this. I'm excited about Legions Imperialis, and I'm excited. Ooh, look at this pro level transition. I'm also excited about our next segment. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into our sort of what we love about the new Legions Imperialis, where we'd like to see it go. And in our second segment, we are finally going to talk, and Josh, this is part of why you're here, man. We need the big chunky Titan discussion. So we're going to talk the Warmaster, and we're going to talk the Iconoclast, what the hell they are, when you should use them, and just when you should use them. That was a weird transition, and I'll just edit that out. Cool. Let's take a break. So we finally all have Legions Imperialis. people have covered this to death with schedules and life things. I haven't gotten to play this yet. There's going to be one of my we're going to go through, we're each going to pick something awesome that we love about this, dish on that a little bit, talk about something that needs improvement or something that we're not as excited about, and then discuss where we think or would like to see this game go from here. So they released the starter box. The starter box has Space Marines. The starter box has Solar Auxilia, a couple of Titans in it. It's a good set. There's a lot of stuff in it, good value to it. We've had some releases already. I mean, we have the Rhinos, additional infantry for Space Marines, and the Kratos. Is that right?
Kratos and Bane Blades.
Oh yeah, Bane Blades for the guard, and the Solar Auxilia, and we have additional Solar Auxilia infantry that are out. They repackaged the Aeronautica stuff to where you have all those things, and they offered bases for people that want to go from Aeronautica to the 40 mil bases that match and everything like that. So we have some stuff. We have enough stuff to start playing games. Let's start out. What's something that is awesome about the game, or just awesome about how it's been released so far? Josh, we're gonna let our guests go first here. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, this is a 30-year journey that I'm have been a part of, and so happy to see it come back and the kind of mainstream. Like, this is really, I think, a new third tier of Games Workshop at this rate. With, yeah. I think even more so than this might be blasphemy for some of you guys, but 28 millimeter Horus Heresy. Like, for a lot of me, and maybe it's just my personal bias and miniature war game journey, but I feel like this is actually a bigger kind of corner of Games Workshop these days than Horus Heresy 28 millimeter is. I'm super thrilled to see it come back. Like, again, I started with the original Adeptus Titanicus was the first miniature war game we ever got into, like in the late 80s. So here we are, 30 plus years later, and we've got it back full released. I think it's a beautiful kind of reimagination of the classic rule set. So it's just a little bit of modern game update to the Space Marine 2nd edition rule set, which was already for its time, had a lot of kind of modern game design baked in there. So there was a lot of kind of regression from that release. So happy to see it's pretty true to that experience. And the miniatures are absolutely incredible. Like, I cannot praise just the detail and the scale, and they're adorable. Like, who doesn't want to play at this scale? The fact that it integrates everything that we've already been playing at 8 millimeter too is just icing on the cake, right? So I've got all my Aeronautica planes, as you, I know Brian, you do as well. Get to tie those in. So we've got Aeronautica, we've got Titanicus, all the Titans get to come and play, and now we have everything else to go with that. So we've got infantry, tanks, walkers, and what else comes? I just can't sing its praise enough of how happy I am that it has arrived.
Yeah. I would second all of that you said. The thing that I would throw in is that, just to go in a little further into depth, you're mentioning that it was based more on the classic rule set. I don't have a problem with the, Epic Armageddon, the last version, that came out. I don't have an issue with that one. It wasn't my favorite rule set, but I do like that the rules are close enough that I did like a little online hangout thing with Colin the other day, and he was mentioning like, oh man, I can't learn another game and read a 300-page rule book and this, that, and the other. But it's like, this is close enough that as I'm reading it, I'm really picking out the differences between, 2nd edition Space Marine and this. And it's close enough, and it does, the rules seem to, I haven't played it out. So there could be something that feels weird once we get going. It feels close enough to Epic, and the thing that Epic always did for me was you have units that kind of, if you take Horus Heresy, for example, a unit Devastators or support Marines with heavy bolters, they do more in your head than they do on the table. if that makes any sense. Like the rate of fire isn't enough and that sort of a thing. And I've always felt that Epic does a better job of that. You know, like the old school Rough Riders back in the day actually were scary against things. Ogrins actually felt like the units feel the way that they're supposed to. And so far with the rules that I'm looking at with the Legion stuff, it looks like it fits. So for me, it's close enough with just enough tweaks that it's not a brand new game, but it's fresh. And that's going to be my positive. So Eric, what's your, now that you're going third, man, we're really setting you at home field disadvantage there.
We're good. So for me, Epic is actually the one that got away. By this point in sort of specialist games in my hobby journey, I was pretty heavily on the fantasy side of things. And so I didn't play original Epic. So I'm excited to have it come back. And I think the thing I'm most excited about, which is ironic given what I'm actually intending to play as Imperial Fists, is the Solar Auxilia stuff. First of all, because the tank sculpts are gorgeous and amazing. But also I feel like that's the scale that army is supposed to be played at.
Yeah.
When you look at it at the tabletop and it's like, okay, we got a couple tanks and some just so infantry, and I feel like it doesn't really hit its stride and isn't that visual of what I want. Versus like, yeah, there's a whole on company of Lehman Russes coming down the road. Visually is where I want that army to be. And so I'm excited about the potential for that army in this scale, having really large armored formations, transporting dudes to sit on objectives and hold them, and sort of that grim last stand as you're facing Trader Marines. That sort of feeling is, I think, really cool, and something that I'm glad there's, I think, a scale where it plays well off that. I've said, I think, a lot recently to folks. I think Solar Auxilia plays best either in Zone Mortalis or Epic, and like not a whole lot in between. And so I'm glad to see them in I think a setting where they get to sort of show off why that as an organization and a part of the Imperial military is cool.
Yeah.
I'll jump on that real quick, and a quick positive I have in addition to that, which is very much in line with that, is the fact that you can play these kind of epic, no pun intended, games of where you have just a ton of stuff. It's really how Horus Heresy battles were envisioned and meant to be played, right? And the game does such a good job of giving you that much, those many models and toys to play with. There's enough granularity built into the rule set that everything kind of matters and makes a difference and feels unique, but it's also streamlined enough that stuff is going to die very quickly, which is kind of fitting for battle at that scale.
Yeah. And like you were mentioning, Guard, just they do play better. Like I used to play second, third edition, some of fourth. I played like an infantry guard army in 40K. And when I played Epic, I always felt like it translated a lot better, and getting to use things like Baneblade companies and tank companies and things like that. Like it feels like a guard thing where you're like, I outnumber everybody. Look at all the firepower I have. And then you get to the end of the game and you're like, oh fuck, everybody's dead. Like that is how guard should look. And it should be a giant grinder of a thing. So yeah, I'm on board with all of that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing sort of on that is it resolves some of the sort of narrative and image issues I have with it, and it's not just guard, but especially guard, Solar Ox, things like that at 28mm is like, what is the Basilisk doing here?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
a Basilisk should be miles away from this battle. What has happened? And the answer is like, okay, so park the Basilisks in the back. And similarly, Brian, they have done the thing you and I have been advocating since we both read the Drop Zone Commander rules, which is that flyers fly on, do their thing, and then leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than this, the 40K, like, how many 90-degree turns can I have to stay effectively hovering in this little corner of airspace The answer is a marauder shows up, gets shot at, drops a bunch of bombs, and then is gone.
Yes. Yes.
And the rules interaction of having the different alternating activations, but then also having different combat firing phases within that combat phase. So you got first fire, you got advanced fire, and then you've got our engagement. Sorry, is in between that, and then advancing fire. Makes interactions really interesting on when you bring planes on and who's first firing at what, and like let interceptors actually intercept things and take the bombers out before they can do the bombing run. And it's just beautiful interactions. I can't wait to dive deep into it.
Yeah, I think being able to tinker with when you get to shoot has been something that clearly they're like, oh, we get all kinds of freedom now. Because there's like 3 different times where you can shoot.
Yes. Yeah, God, I totally forgot about the aircraft thing, but Eric, you were absolutely right. They really did solve the as far as bombing runs and things like that. It just feels better. Like a game of 40K, I don't, like maybe a Valkyrie shows up and drops some stuff off, but like fixed wing aircraft, hypersonic aircraft, you're like, what, how is this thing just making 90-degree turns and then going, like, it ruins all immersion in the game, period. So we all agree, we're all on board. This is awesome. And 28 millimeter is going to have is going to have its hands full trying to get into future episodes that should come more than every quarterly here out, I'm hoping. But what are things that you think could be tweaked or need improvement, or maybe even were disappointing with the game so far? And Josh, we'll let you go first on that one.
So this is the caveat with haven't had time to play a game yet, since still building or painting. Everything's built and I've got lots of it. The biggest out of the box complaint for me is the tokens themselves. So these are the order and objective tokens that come in the box set, and I would say, flimsiness of not even card stock. It's a heavyweight paper that they've used for all your order tokens, which is something to call out on the game. Every detachment within the game is going to need an order token, so you're going to use these things frequently and lots of them. And the fact that the box tokens are just kind of this flimsy, heavier weight paper, I think they're just going to disintegrate after not much time. There are lots of options out there, and if you are on any of the communities for this, almost everybody else is addressing some 3D print options for that. So there are workarounds readily available, but just the fact that is kind of the base component out of the box set is probably the biggest beef I've had. I could go a little bit deeper about kind of the starter box contents. It's still a great deal, but I also think it's not necessarily the best way to start the game.
Yeah.
But I'll let you guys take a stab at it first.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that totally. The thing, I don't know that I don't know that it needs improvement, and other people have pointed this out, but when you start doing the math on it, this game takes a shitload of models. I mean, not that Epic didn't before, but for some reason it still caught me off guard. I mean, when you start looking at what the points totals are and what you need to actually field games, because like with any game, you should, before you go to look at the rules and how you kill stuff and move and morale and anything like that, is look at how you score missions. And you need infantry to score missions, right? And so it just takes a lot. And when you look at the starter set, and it's not that the starter set's a bad value, and I don't think that $50 retail US or $42.50 at online places like Herod Games or things like that, I don't think that's a bad price for like the infantry companies that they have, or like the Astartes Infantry or the Solar Auxilia. But it is going to take a lot. And even though these things paint fast, like you're going to need to, it's going to take some commitment. And I think that this game is aimed pretty squarely at grognards. So they know what's up, they know what they're in for, and they've been waiting for it for long enough. But I don't know that I'm not sure if a lot of new players are going to pick this up and stick with it, just given the commitment, because you can make those points up by taking, if you had Aeronautica flyers, like that's the only reason why I'm doing Sons of Horus and not World Eaters, is that I had flyers painted up already, and I have so much World Eater stuff planned for Heresy 30K that I don't want to deal with World Eaters on every scale possible and every era possible in the same year. So I lose my mind. But I think people are going to initially will start have to lean really hard into like big heavy tank companies and things like that just to make up the points, and the game will be a little weird for them in doing that. So I would say, as far as something for improvement, I hope that they very quickly come out with some sort of Battle Force box to where you can pick this stuff up at a slight discount, but also just get the stuff and have it all ready to go. Because I mean, they're restocking stuff already. It went out of stock pretty fast, but that was expected. But I would like to see some way to address that, to try to kind of rope people in, because people might have a little bit of sticker shock once they read the rules, make a few lists. I think introducing some sort of a battle box, or a start collecting style, $100 to $140 box or something like that, I think would go a long ways. So that's mine. Eric, what is your where's your area of improvement or something you'd like to see changed?
Yeah. So I think mine is the rules themselves are actually, I think, not written terribly well in a couple places.
Mm,
I ended up reading the morale stuff like 4 times before I sort of got it in. There's a lot of as discussed below or as discussed above.
yeah.
And I think there's an interesting sort of philosophical thing about designing rule books that I'm reading. Rick Priestley has a book about designing war games that I'm reading. And one of the things is, do you design your rule book to introduce people to the game, or do you design your rule book to be a good reference book? And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
like the canonical example of this for me now is the Heresy rule books are not good reference books.
No.
Looking up something in those is an exercise in frustration. Um, the Legions Imperialis book feels like it's slightly better as a reference, but in turn is making things slightly less accessible as you sort of read them. There's a couple places where I found myself having to flip back, or like there's discussions of what flyers do, and then like you don't actually get introduced to what flyers do for like 3 chapters.
Right. Right.
And so there's some stuff like that I struggled with a little bit, and I think that'll come up um a little bit, and then just it's going to be a while before everyone understands the nature of the keywords that come to things,
Yeah.
because some of them are wildly unintuitive. um
Right.
like I still haven't really wrapped my head around light AT as what that fully does. And so I think
Yeah.
I think there's
anti-tank, light, anti-tank, and then light is an
yeah.
interesting pairing. I mean, for me, it makes sense, but it's not intuitive in the wording of the words
Yeah.
they've chosen, right? But
Yeah, like when I read the rules, I was like, oh, okay, this is for this. This is good at shooting walkers and things like that. Okay, all right, I'm with you. But like, yeah, you read the original sort of version of the rule, and I think because they want the the rule set to have all the special rules for anything they expect you to encounter at all in this game. It's just sort of a overwhelming torrent of like, oh yeah, but this is only going to come up with a particular Titan weapon. Uh, but
Yeah.
like, but we need to put it there because we want you to be able to field that Titan. And so I think some of it is just from a rules set for trying to get new people in. I think the combination of uh the fact that this is like as much as there are tons of tiny little toy soldiers in here, this is essentially combat patrol epic.
Yeah.
Like you don't have a full army. You don't have anything close to it. I think the combination of that and the rule set will make things a little bit more daunting than they otherwise should be. And like, I want this game to exist and thrive. So that's my where I'd insert it is maybe Warhammer community could use some flowcharts.
I'm down with flowcharts. That's for sure. Man, Josh, let's go into we get to wish list here and see. We get to put our hats on. Where do we want to see this go? Maybe we can each pick where we think it's going to go, and then pick the aim high, hoping to hit something. Would love to see it go.
Yeah.
Josh, where do you see what's the thing you see coming, or what's a logical step, and what is the swing for the fences you hope this happens?
Yeah, so I think the logical step is, there's already allusions to this in the rule book, is just more, right? More in this 30K context, more armies. Like, I would love to see demons being brought in here, and I think we're going to see demons. I think we're going to see Primarchs. And I think they're going to, I mean, it'll be interesting having a Primarch at that scale. But I think they're going to be more of a support piece than necessarily a combat monster. But I think that's a really cool thing that is going to mix up the game and how it plays. And like, whatever, Primarch's going to cost 50 points or something like that in a 3,000 point game. So they're probably not going to be that. I mean, they might end up costing whatever 100 points, but they'll be relatively small, but hopefully have a kind of a nice sphere of influence. And I think there's a lot of fun, kind of interesting game design and interaction that can bring. Demons again would love to see, and just more of the tanks that we're going to get. Like, obviously we know Spartans and Land Raider Proteus are coming. Drop pods are on their way. Land speeders, speeder bikes, Leviathan dreadnoughts, Dorado dreadnoughts are all coming. We all have seen the previews for those already. The pie in the sky wish listing is obviously for, at some point, for this to cross the threshold and go into 40K, and at least see some of the main races would be a happy spot, and definitely grow the game for a lot of people immediately, right? So if we get Eldar, Necrons, Orcs, Tyranids at a minimum, maybe not everybody else, but I would love to see that. And that's definitely kind of the pie in the sky wish listing. We'll see if it ever comes to pass. With Aeronautica being where it is right now, and none of those other factions being supported with Titanicus, obviously with the 30K focus, we'll see if it ever comes to pass. But that's my wish list for it, is that at some point we'll actually cross that. But I'm so happy for the game as is, and what we already know is coming.
Yeah. Now, as far as, oh, and don't forget the jet bikes too. The scimitar dick bikes, dude. With those, as soon as those are announced, his phone is immediately gonna blow up. Like, yes, those are happening. I don't care what Legion it is. Like, he has 2 boxes of 30K ones that, man, if Sensible Brian hadn't won out this year, I would already own both of those boxes of jet bikes, because I'm like, I have 6 painted for 30K and I want like 15 more. And that's, thankfully it's not happening, but it will happen at this scale. So for me, I think it'll be interesting to see how they go to roll things out, because one thing that I'm not crazy about is there are Legion rules in the basic rules, and they are not created equally. Like, those are, some of them I feel like I get what they were trying to do, but I feel like they really missed the mark. You know, like the Sons of Horus one, I was already considering going World Eaters, and when I read the World Eaters one, I mean, the World Eaters one is insanely powerful.
Yeah.
So when you roll your combat dice, they get to re-roll one of them. That is ridiculous. World Eaters look awesome, and I just have too many of them, so I have to back off on it. The Sons of Horus one, where it's like, okay, if you're within 6 inches, you can re-roll ones, and I'm like, how often does that come up? And what does that even? I don't know. What I'm hoping is that where I could see,
you only have an 8-inch range, so whatever, it should be 75% of the time.
Yeah, but I mean, re-rolling ones? How many dice are you really rolling?
One.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Well, but I mean, how many? Yeah. Well, then again, if we go back to our conversation about how I rolled at up in Chico,
right.
I guess I'll be able to see ones twice, many times. But where I could see the game going, I'll come back to that. Where I could see the game going is when they get into the Legion upgrades. I don't think they're going to do Primarchs and Specialist troops in plastic, because you're going to have to do 18 of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could do, Sons of Horus, you're going to have what? The Justarians, the Reavers, Horus, right? Those, you could do those on a plastic sprue, but they're just not going to sell enough. You know, are they really going to make a word bearer sprue? Like that's, I don't see that happening. But what I do see them doing is, I'm hoping that if they have Forge World do it, I'm okay with these being in resin, because unless the formula for making resin is changed, if you go back and look in the day when Forge World did infantry models for Grey Knights and Tau for Epic, they looked fucking fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It scales well. So unless there's something with resin, as long as the formula and technology is still the same. Like, I don't know if those look awesome because resin used to be made with something that made cancer airborne and contagious. You know, like that could be a thing and they have to retool it. But they can make infantry. They made infantry at 6mm scale that looked really, really damn good, that will compete with these plastics. Absolutely no problem. I could see them doing a pack, you know, where it's like, okay, for Sons of Horus, you get Horus and a bunch of, you know, I don't need the individual characters. I don't need all the other little individual ones. But as far as, I agree with you, Josh, that if it's like an influence thing, you know, or they allow you to substitute something out in a style of formation or that kind of a thing, I definitely can see that. And I would love to see, you know, World Eaters, Rampagers, and all that sort of stuff. What I hope they do, and this isn't even aiming for the fences, I hope that it works out this way, is that I hope that they introduce it in a way where it doesn't get dumped on us, so they have time to do it. Is, if they're going to introduce Primarchs and do that sort of thing, I don't know if they have the time to do it, but if they did it the way they did the Horus Heresy, we're like, okay, we'll start at Istvan 3. These are the 4 legions. We're going to release the stuff for that. You know, so it kind of has time to evolve a little bit and sort of marinate, rather than just everybody wants everything now. And I think just starting out with 2 factions is a good way, because they can get all the core stuff out and then slowly give us flavor. Eric, where do you see it going, and what would you like to see?
So where I see it going, and sort of my near-term practical hope, is that it stays well supported. And I think importantly that it stays well supported in some of the foundational things. So like the thing that's actually bothering me right now. So flyer bases and reference cards, like make sure those things stay in stock would be real nice. But that was one of the things that made, you know, I live in a small town, so whether a game is thriving or not depends on like 3 or 4 people. And what really hit Heresy pretty hard for us was how much trouble it was getting things. So for a long time, our store had all the specialist units you could possibly want, but God help you if you wanted a Mark 6 or a Mark 3 Marine. Like can't help you, sorry. And so we lost some people with like, yeah, I have this vision of what I want, and I Games Workshop will not let me give them money for the tiny toy soldiers that let me enact my vision. And we lost some momentum because of that. So like on the Forge World side of things, you know, one of our local guys wanted Tyrant Siege Terminators, and they were just out of stock for like 9 months. And in that time, he went and did something else and is like, okay, I'm playing 40K now again. So I'd like to see, you know, in addition to the support they've got right now, sort of a steady cadence of things that goes with that. And then the like pie in the sky wish list is I want Mechanicum. I want all the wacky like vibro cannon on treads that destroys whole cities. Like I want that nonsense that does not actually belong on a 28mm tabletop. I want it all. I want, you know, wacky, you know, can transport an entire company of Marines, drills, and things that kill Titans by, you know, unmaking them at a molecular level. I want all that bullshit. And then I also want like legions of Skitarii. I want like just, you know, carpets of Robo Men being sent forward. So yeah, I'd go hard for Mechanicum if they brought them out, and I'd love to see them, because again, I think this is a scale where all the weird shit gets to come out.
Yes, and it belongs.
And it belongs, and
Yeah.
that's really what I'd like to see.
Oh my god, I was trying to think if they're. I don't know if they'll. I don't know. So heresy wise, I don't know the lore as far as where they were at, but like the old gigantic guard transports and things like that. You know, like the squats also had as well, like
The Leviathans.
Yeah, Leviathans and things like that. I wonder if those
got to bring the land trains back.
Yeah,
well,
so the Leviathans exist because in Fury of Magnus throws one at the walls of the Imperial Palace with his mind, because
as Magnus does,
as one does.
Throws one. Jesus Christ! Wow. Well, I mean, so far, I mean, the beauty of this is, you know, there's some minor quibbles. You know, oh, the rule book isn't laid out great. Well, that sure as hell hasn't stopped me from playing Games Workshop games, right? So, like, there are no deal breakers here. I just see it as a bunch of positives, and I think it'll go. The enthusiasm that I've seen for it locally, I mean, we have enough of a crowd of players that played it back in the day that also play Titanicus, and the people that play it here also. Josh, we are so lucky to live in an area, and I mean, I'm not trying to sprain my wrist patting ourselves on the back here, but it's like there are fucking good looking armies around here.
Right.
You know, like when you look at like the stuff that Ivan is doing in our Discord group, like he's making Iron Warriors and he's printing the things for the Terminators, the Tyrant Siege Terminators. Like he's printed the little missile racks for him and everything.
He designed his own Cyclone missile launchers for 8mm Terminators. So every one of his Terminators has a little Cyclone pack on it, and he designed and printed magnet compatible sponsons for all of his Predators and Krytos and what are the Sicarans? Yeah, like it's impressive, and just incredibly talented painter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, you win Golden Demons by being good. he's fucking real good. So, I'm super excited, and you know, we'll probably talk about this in the next episode. But I mean, what I like about it too is that this is a game with stuff getting released gradually and all that sort of a thing, and hopefully, Eric, like you're saying, that it stays supported and that kind of a thing. This game feels like a nice long haul thing, and a game like Titanicus where it's not going to change on you so much that, you know, if you need to take a little bit of time off from it or don't feel like adding anything and just want to play for a while, like you're not going to fall behind and lose sight of things. So this game to me is a giant win.
I'm not anticipating the Legions Imperialis, balanced data slate to disrupt how you're doing this every couple months. I'm not really seeing that.
Right.
Where you're sitting there going, oh man, I wish I didn't play Sons of Horus, because
meta watch for
meta watch, because the latest LVO results have really messed up my new epic. I don't see that. This feels like another game that you can hold in your head, you can build towards something, and that it'll mostly work how it's supposed to.
Yeah,
this is absolutely a specialist game, and pros and cons with that. The one downside is what I hope they don't do is what they've done with Necromunda and Titanicus to some extent, but it's like every single set of model releases is a small group, but requires its own new book to supplement that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I have a library here of 20 Necromunda and Titanicus books, and, you know, I'm here for them. Like, I love that, but I also don't necessarily want to have that be the experience of another specialist game. It's kind of, it's par for the course, and it is what I do expect to happen, but I will be thrilled if they either release a ton of stuff in a compendium, or if the card packs, some of the things that aren't released yet are in the card packs. But not everything that they've announced there. So we already know we're going to need another card pack to support the new stuff that's coming out. And like, that's totally fine. I get that. And we know there's another book coming sometime in the next year. Maybe even a second book. We'll see, but I just hope it's not here's a book once a quarter for you to keep up with it.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially with like the card packs, keeping printed material in stock is Games Workshop's, I think, Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And so it would be nice if either they do the thing where like, yeah, you can download these and print them on heavy card stock yourself if you want to, or if they do a better job keeping those in stock, because that's always my like, whenever they come out with a card pack, I end up like asking myself like, do I see me needing this ever again in the future? Okay, I should probably buy it, because unlike the plastic models, there's not a reliable like, yeah, this will be here in a couple years.
Yeah. Now for 40K 10th edition, I haven't kept track because almost all the armies that I play, I went and bought the packs for, either in the first or second round of it. But I mean, they've kept those in stock more or less. Have they, or do you guys know on that?
The index cards?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I haven't actually noticed, partially because 2 of the 3 armies that I play already have codexes. So I've already had to like, knowing Marines were coming so quick, I opted not to buy the index cards. It's like, I will use the app, and the book's going to be here in a month anyways. Necrons I did buy the index cards for, and of course they already have a codex and data cards to go with those now as well. And I'm sure the data cards will continue to be supported. And the index cards for those are going to drop off because they've been replaced already.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the rest of the factions, though.
Yeah, they do. I think they've done an okay job for 40K so far.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm hoping that with that, I mean, given also that you aren't having to do, just all 18 legions are going to use the same cards. It's the specialist stuff. I mean, that I could see being a PDF that you print or something like that, especially if you get the models from Forge World. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I want to paint teeny tiny Horus. I want to paint teeny tiny Angron. I suppose I could buy teeny tiny Mortarion and not pay him for 2 years, and have to put in every post that I do an update of Angron. I know I know this is not Mortarion. And at any rate, well,
you got to commit to the bet.
I wish I didn't. It'll happen. So let's take a break here, because on the other side we get to go. Josh, this is the real thing we brought here. I mean, we brought you here. You're a fine gentleman, and I fucking miss hanging out with you, even though you work like 2 minutes, or you live 2 minutes from my work. But yeah, we need to talk the big chonky ones. And on the other side of the break, we'll talk the Warmaster and the Iconoclast. Okay, and for our final segment into 8mm glory, let's go to the biggest thing, I think, right now that you can field in either Titanicus or in Legions Imperialis. So let's go to the big boys. Now, when we look at these, I got to be honest, I don't know the lore on these. I haven't read up on any of them. I just remember seeing the Iconoclast and it's like gigantic skyscraper size get fucked chainsword, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. I don't care why it's here or how it works.
It's your spirit animal.
So these were added in this edition. Josh, or you guys are more familiar with the older versions of the game. Was there mention of these? I mean, is this one of those things where it was like some little sidebar in the rule book, they mentioned some kind of a thing and then made rules for it? Or is this just like a brand new thing for Titanicus, the 2018 version?
Officially, to my knowledge, this is the first time it exists. In our little text chat, I'll do some good radio here and actually send you this, because there's a sketch that Jess Goodwin did, and I just sent that to our group text message, so you guys can check that out for reference here. This is from, I don't know, however many years ago, 25 plus years ago. This is a published image that Jess Goodwin did in an art book that came out from Games Workshop.
Oh shit! Yeah,
this is the concept art, as far as anyone knows, of what the War Masters used to be, and this was really only a concept sketch at this point. So,
yeah.
And from that sketch to what actually came to pass in the model are kind of as divergent as they are similar. So there are a lot of similarities to that design that are true to the models. And they've also, done some very different things, especially with that kind of upper shoulder look of it.
Now, question on the illustration, and this is fantastic radio. We're referencing something that nobody can see. They show like a little tech priest down in the corner there, and when you're looking at that,
he's actually pretty tall.
Yeah, I was gonna say this thing looks like it's like Warhound size, if
Yeah.
that's how tall a person is. But I mean, but as far as like the elements, you know, like with the groin, the segmented groin plate, the gun and the kneecap for no reason, the kind of big boxy shoulders, that kind of stuff, that all makes sense. Now I wish if they had one of these with a fucking melta cannon on it like that, I would own one in
Yeah.
a heartbeat. And a giant missile fist or whatever the hell that thing is. But okay, so there was some sort of an illustration or something they had based it on.
There probably is established lore for it. I don't know any of it specifically.
Okay.
There's a passage in Mortis that you probably skipped as you tried to skip through Mortis as fast as possible. That
God, that book was dog shit. Sorry.
The suggestion behind the Warmaster and the Iconoclast is if you read back and like read up on like the Leviathan siege dreadnought, there's this like, yeah, the Emperor was totally prepared for going to war with Mars and was sort of homegrowing some of their own solutions. This is the Mechanicum doing the same thing.
Okay.
The Warmasters are their sort of break in case of emergency. We did not tell the Emperor we had these. They've been sort of sitting in hangars, waiting for a proper war.
Right.
Which I think is one of their ways to explain why they don't show up in like a bunch of the earlier lore for the game. Is like, oh yeah, we were keeping these sort of in secret. But shit's real now. So surprise, we have some really big Titans. So that's what I understand of their lore, is that this is essentially the Martian version of the break in case of emergency weapons that show up in the Heresy because everything's gone to shit.
Now, when we look, the models themselves, I think, sell the models more than the rules do. As far as the models go, I mean, they don't look that much bigger, but they are substantially taller than even like a Warlord Titan. Like they feel lankier and a little bit longer and goofy in proportion and things like that. But they are, you don't buy one of these because you thought of a really good list. Does that make sense? Because when you find that really good list, let me know.
Yeah. I think especially with the Iconoclast, you bought it for the chainsword that's the size of another Titan. And then you said, like, after that arrived and you assembled it, okay, what are the rules for this? Yeah. I think are how that goes for almost everyone.
Yes.
Although arguably, I think the Iconoclast is actually a better, more versatile game piece than the Warmaster variant, which is also awesome, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But
oh god, yes. So if we get into what they do, the first thing that I think you really, really have to wrap your head around. So it isn't, you know, they have a pair of shoulder. So like if I start, Iconoclast and the Warmaster are both similar in that they each have a set of different shoulder weapons, right? And they're different ones that you can. They're going to have two. The Warmaster has the two giant cannons. You have the shoulder mounted ones, and then you have a carapace mounted one weapon, forward firing, and then you have an auxiliary system. So they both of them have that. When you look at them, just stat wise, if you don't have one, I'll just kind of rattle through it. So Iconoclast is 3-up command, 3+ ballistic skill. The speed is like a warlord. It's a 4 inches or 6 inches if you push it. Weapon skill 5. It can do 1 maneuver, 3 if you push it, and 6 servitor clades, which is pretty good. Unless you roll like hot dog shit. Like I rolled 6 dice, 3 repair phases, and did not bring back my shields once. So that, anyways. But speaking of shields, let's get positive. It has
all of them.
4 shields in the 3-up slot, 2 at 4-up, and then you run out. Reactor, I believe that this would be rated at reactor for days. Even I haven't melted this thing down.
I have yet to see a Warmaster variant take itself out with a reactor.
Yeah, you don't go yellow until you are on the 4th peg. Um, you have two of those. You go orange on the 6th one, and you go red on the 8th one. So even I haven't blown one of these things up, and that I do cook things. When you get into the damage track is pretty long on these things. So if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you know Titans. You don't start giving bonuses on locations until you take your 5th damage point. And then they have four slots for critical hits instead of 3 like other ones have. So they are pretty tanky.
Their armor is higher across the board as well, which makes it harder to get damage in any of those locations.
Yeah, so on the head, you need a 16 before you get a devastating hit. You need a 13 before you score a direct hit. The body, 13 gets you a direct hit, 14, 15 devastating, and you need a 16 and up for a critical hit. So they're pretty damn well armored. Leg, same thing, 13, 15 for a direct, 16 for a devastating, 17 or more for a critical. Their scale is 12. So as far as terrain and things like that, I mean, you're walking over things that are 6 inches high. These are pretty damn big. Now, where they get dicey is, I don't have the base cost for the Warmaster because I don't own it, and I won't for Furians.
850.
They're both 850. Now, this is before you start tacking weapons on. So if you go into shoulder weapons, if you decide you want to go, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, there's nothing that says you have to take the same two. You could take one on a different one on each shoulder if you wanted to, correct?
Yeah, you can mix and match those. They're not a paired system at all.
Yeah, so you have a laser blaster, and this is I just pulled it up and I'm like, that would be a Reaver one. Laser blasters, you have a Melta cannon. It's a little bit shorter ranged. A Vulcan Mega Bolter that you can take. An Inferno gun, which is the giant get fucked flamethrower. Plasma blast gun. Apocalypse missile array, which is not as good as the Reaver one on each shoulder, but it's still decent. And the Turbo Laser Destructor with which is exactly like the other one, but it doesn't have a penalty at long range. So 0 to 16 or up to 32, you don't have any sort of a thing on it. But I mean, let's say if you go with 2 laser destructors, you have an 850 point Titan, you just added 60 points to it. Now you're at 910. And most games are at 1750. You start getting into arm weapons, you're really adding points. So for the giant get fucked Desolator Chainsword is 50 points on top of that. If I can sell you on this though, the giant get fucked Desolator Chainsword has its short range is 4 inches and it has the melee rule. So you can attack from 4 inches out, which is the only way that I got in with that lone Warhound and cord the thing. But you have four dice at strength 10. It has melee, rending, and bypass. So even if you're outside of the 2 inches, you're still inside shields. From there, the other arm, you have a fist. And if we look at the fist, there's 2 options. The cheapest one is 50 points. So the arms are adding 100 or 110 before you even get to the other systems. The Kaya Siege Drill, 2-inch normal melee stuff. It has fusion, which is also draining. +2 to hit, 3 attacks at strength 13, or you can take the Creus Grav Imploder, +2 to hit at 2 inches. At short range, it has melee and rending. At long range, if you're shooting, up to 8 inches. 2 shots, strength 12, concussive, draining, ordnance, and quake. It just does all kinds of...
just all the special rolls.
It does all the fucking at short range. The big thing that it does, and this is the difference between the two, and man, if you could swap out the Carapace weapons, I think every single Warmaster would take this one. And when we get into how they work, Josh was saying before that he thought the Iconoclast, and I agree 100%. This is why, well, the Chainsword is why I own it, but the only reason why I won't get a Warmaster is because I can't get around this. In the Carapace thing, and this is adding another 40 points on top of all the other points that we've added onto this thing. The Cruciator Gatling Array, short range up to 10 inches, it gets +1 to hit. Long range is 30, so decent range. 12 dice at strength 6. It's a Carapace weapon. It also has ordnance too, so you get to reroll damage rolls 1.
It's just a better version of the Gatling blaster, the paired Gatling blasters on a Warlord, which is probably the best weapon system in the game for shield stripping, at least.
Yes.
Also,
And then
that's just
Titans.
That's just monstrously better than the standard Warmasters.
Yes. And then from there, I mean, you have an auxiliary or ancillary reactor system. So you have one of the ones they have dedicated void shunts. Once per round, a Titan with this reactor system may declare voids to full without pushing its reactor. Now, these don't say, the other ones, the weapons I was just talking about specifically say Iconoclast. These don't. So you can mix and match these with the Warmaster. The other one is kinetic transducers. If a Titan with this upgrade moves 5 inches or more during the movement phase, add 1 to the strength of all weapons with the melee trait it is equipped with for the remainder of that phase. In addition, a Titan with this upgrade may make a smash attack when moving as part of a charge order in addition to any other attack it makes. Combine that with the just once per game supercharge that you can do with the Trader Titan, and this thing cores things pretty fucking well.
If you don't kill whatever you swing at, your dice ate you.
Yeah, I rolled like shit and still one turn. And man, this is like saying a pro fighter is like, yeah, I walked up and knocked that fucking kindergartner out cold. They flew back and hit the wall and did not get up for 20 minutes. But yeah, the Warhound, like, sometimes you have those moments where you charge something with the Reaver and you're like, ooh, these dice didn't go well and I didn't do enough damage to blow it up. This thing, like, you even when you fuck up, you got, if you're able to get in range with both weapons, you're going to destroy things. So guys, how does, we went through the shoulder things. Can you guys give us the carapace weapon and the arm weapons for the Warmaster?
Yeah, so the arm weapons, and this is where this gets a little dicey, is these are 70 points apiece. So you're adding 140 points to the cost of your 850 point Titan before you get into any of the other gubbins. You have the Suzerain class Plasma Destructor, which has a short range of 16 inches where it gets +1 accuracy, a long range of 30. So it's sort of a mid-range gun as far as guns the size of Reaver Titans go. You get 3 dice for each one. It's strength 11. It comes with fusion, which is draining, and maximal fire. So if you get into that short range, you're hitting things pretty hard, because that is then strength 13 and a d10 for your damage dice, because you have the reactor to do maximal fire. So that's they're nasty guns when they get going. The carapace weapon at 50 points is the perpetually disappointing Revelator missile launcher. One of the very few things I think Games Workshop has actually clarified in Adeptus Titanicus, which is a rule set that notoriously does not get FAQs, was like, no, you do not get to pick and mix this. Which everyone was like, surely we can, and then the answer is no. We get the Revelator missile launcher, which has a short range of 24 and a long range of 48, and your +1 accuracy at 48. So range is good. You get 3 dice, and their strength 8, and the traits are carapace, concussive, limitive 4, and ordnance.
So you get 4 shots with that in the game, and then it's out.
Yeah. And I think I think because there's 4 missiles modeled in the thing.
Yeah.
but real talk, why?
I mean, there's only 5 turns in a game, but it's so you're not sitting back and first firing, like from a mechanical standpoint.
You're not sitting back for 1 turn in first.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
And I think the real weakness of it is you only get 3 dice.
Yeah.
So this is actually a missile launcher for shooting at something whose shields are down.
Yeah.
And you don't really have the means to take anybody's shields down.
The base shooting variant of the Warmaster is incredible at killing Titans. It is terrible at stripping shields.
Yeah.
So
and then the reactor systems it gets. Yeah, it has to bring friends. We'll get into that bit. The reactor system is, you can choose between plasmic locomotors, which is a Titan with this upgrade, increases its default and boosted movement characteristic by 1 inch. However, after declaring all power to locomotors or power to stabilizers, it suffers a -2 modifier to all hit rolls for weapons made by a Titan with that weapon without the melee trait until the end of the round. This feels like a really good reactor system for the Iconoclast. And
I gave
just
Brian
okay.
my card of that because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to use that on my Warmaster.
Yes.
Yeah. I can sort of see maybe doing it on an Astorum Warmaster to let it hustle those first 2 turns when you also get a bonus to full stride and try to just pack in the movement and say I wasn't going to shoot anyway. But like that's an edge case. And then the other one is Infusive Supercoolant, which is when activated in the damage control phase, a Titan may engage this reactor system. If they do so, until the end of the round, the Titan can vent plasma on a 2+ instead of a 4+. At the end of the round, flip the card. The reactor system is disabled and has no other effect. So if you somehow did manage to get your reactor spicy by, say, always firing a bunch of fusion guns that have draining on them, and you are genuinely running pretty hot, you can solve that, because with 6 servitor clays, you're going to get rid of a ton of heat if you're doing it on a 2-up. So this basically makes sure that those extremely hot guns that you're firing, or if you have chosen the expensive option for the shoulder guns because you really, really, really want to pay all the money, and you are also like maximal firing with the plasma blast gun or firing shield bane turbo laser destructors for a combination of 60 points if you take 2 of them, you can keep your reactor cool. You will not cook this Titan off, I think, even if you're trying. But yeah, the other one is definitely, I read that and I had assumed that both Warmasters got both of these, and so they just made one for the Warmaster and one for the Iconoclast. Yeah. And then I read the Iconoclast and I was like, oh no, it also got its special versions. Neat. Yeah.
So, man, how do they do in games? Now, let's talk about, we've seen both sides. We've seen games where they just absolutely shit the sheets, and we've seen games where they dominate and wreck house. Josh, you've played your Warmaster quite a bit. And when does it do well? Like what is a game? What kind of a game? What does a game look like where it does well? What does it need?
I think in general, they're always going to do better in a larger game because you're going to have more things to support it, and you're going to have more things to help supplement its egregious weakness of not being able to drop shields. Like, they are absolutely the closer. They are the finisher. They are there to kill stuff. And if they're trying to strip shields, they are not doing their job. So you need to have friends with it. And if you can support them in such a way, like a split fire order on one of these guys, you could easily kill 2 or 3 Titans if things have gone right for you. And that is awesome. Like, that's where they thrive, and that is their happy place. If those conditions are not perfect, as we saw in the last team game you and I did with Austin and Carl, Brian, where that Iconoclast, sorry, not Iconoclast, Warmaster did almost absolutely nothing that game. Where there wasn't the support for shield stripping. It didn't have the targets it needed. Terrain was blocking line of sights on certain things. They're such a slow lumbering platform. They're actually a roadblock. So you guys were actually hemmed in by the sheer footprint of that Titan being kind of more front and central. You actually had a hard time maneuvering out of the deployment zone to get anything else going. So that actually turned into more of a hindrance than a support. They do quite well if you have the support for them. If dice are decent, they're doing great. If dice aren't great, even then they're okay because they're shooting so many guns. But really, the big thing to hammer home is they need that support. You can bring a Looper Call mana pool with 3 cheaply loaded out Warhounds with almost only exclusively Swarmer missiles and Vulcan Mega Bolters now. And you can fit it in a list at a 1750 point level, which is kind of a standard size point game. Which is possible, but the fact that they cost so many points, they are such an investment that in a alternating activation game, you are always going to be outmaneuvered, outnumbered, and outpositioned because of those two factors. So if
Right.
your opponent is savvy and can kind of arc dodge where that guy's going, they can definitely be mitigated. So it's not necessarily, I mean, they're absolutely amazing, but there's a lot of I think it's very well balanced in that sense that they need some support, and they're slow and lumbering, so they have some inherent uh pros and cons just built into the fact that they are on the table. And
Yeah.
I think it's a really fun unit. It's not necessarily the most competitive unit, but they are absolutely
Mhm.
fun to play with and play against, I think. And that's important for a Titan that's potentially so powerful. The fact that it is fun for both sides to see that on the table is a home run in my book.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about with the new like a swarmer missile warhound with like a with the turbo laser. Like that actually a few of those would be a really good complement to that thing. It would make it much more playable. Because you're right, that is the thing. Like cuz I played against yours um a number of times, and you know what I'm going to do. I'm like, I'm going to take away your support. You know,
Yeah.
all those warhounds, which I mean, you can use that as bait because you know I tend to get aggressive with things, and you can bait with the warhounds and this, that, and the other. But you really can't. You can't screw around and really waste your warhounds or sacrifice them or anything like that. Because the thing with the Warmaster is, it is so reliant on other things to strip shields that that is its massive Achilles heel. And
Yeah.
those are the games that, and you know, I'll say even with the Iconoclast, they both share this in that I don't think they're all that fun. I don't think they're fun at 1750. I think I think they make for kind of, I mean, it's fun to see it on the table, and when it blows up, it nukes everything, you know, and I love those before and after shots when things blow up, where just the thing blows up and here's the before, and then after it, there's like one Titan who's just standing there like, guys, you know, but
Did we win?
the,
Yeah.
I punched it. Did you see, guys? Yeah, it just it feels like they I don't we haven't played a ton of games with it, but it's like I don't feel like even with the Iconoclast, I don't feel like I've had a game where I'm like, yeah, it was a real nail biter and it came right down to the end. It's like you kind of boat race somebody or you get boat raced with it,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just. But the game, the one game that you played with it that we had fun with was the year before this year when we went up and we played that kind of just team game, and I was teamed up with Anthony, and that thing, because it was surrounded, you had oh my god, why am I blanking on his name? Josh
Also Josh.
was yeah,
Team
it was against
Josh
the
against Team
Joshes.
Furians. Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, we were playing, and in that game it was awesome because it was supported by stuff, and you had, you know, a whole other 1750 worth of
Right. Yeah.
stuff, and there were so many Titans in there that a game like that, like if you're going to play a team game and the other person's going to play a more conventional list, that's the way to do it. That's where they shine, and that's where they have fun, and it feels like they belong, versus in a regular game when you're running around with 3 warhounds and a Warmaster, or 3 warhounds and an Iconoclast. You feel like you're just, you feel like you're gambling and you're going real hard and all in on something that has a really good chance of not happening, and it just
Yeah. It's
doesn't
kind of
make for as fun of a game.
a meme list table for one, right? It only takes one model to make it a meme list, but it kind of immediately takes it there, which is,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not the list you want to bring every time, but it's fun for an
no,
occasion. It's fun for the experience.
yeah,
But yeah, it's again definitely not your competitive choice per se.
Yeah, I think the issue is at like 1750 with the like three sort of stripped down warhounds. Now you're talking about one of the major abilities of your Warmaster, which is its ability to shoot things, is now dependent on the durability of a warhound.
yeah,
And so
Yeah.
so what actually is happening is your Warmaster is degrading as your warhounds die.
Yep.
right,
And
right,
that's an uncomfortable position to be in, because
yeah,
you know the thing with warhounds is always there's this like, yeah, but do I shoot at him because there's a scarier thing, whereas
yeah,
with this it's like, yeah, but if I shoot at him I'll win.
right,
And like,
right,
okay, so like, yeah, I'm gonna send like those two lancers are just gonna go wreck a warhound and it'll be fine.
yeah,
Or whatever. So I think there's a problem with that. I think they're good at bigger games.
Yeah.
But I think the key to taking them in lists and how they perform, because I think you're right, they never I haven't encountered one where it's done like average. It's either like this
Yeah.
didn't do anything, or like,
Yeah.
this is the destroyer of worlds and like
Yeah.
did like double tap 2 Titans in a turn.
Right.
And so I think one of the things is you have to, and I didn't do this at Nova and it was a disaster. You can't toss them in a list.
No.
You can't take a 2,000 point list, add a Warmaster to it, and now you have a 3,000 point list, and it's fine. Like, you
Yeah.
need to think about it. What are the Titans that will be escorting this Titan to take shields down? Are those, the sort of laser light show reavers that are just like churning out shield bane shots? Are those, a couple cheap and cheerful warhounds with, the new missile launcher systems and either if you're going expensive, plasma blast guns or turbo laser destructors, or if you're going cheap, Vulcan mega bolters. Like, you need Titans that are like, no, they're right along Titans. This is a battleship and its escorts.
Right.
You can't expect the Warmaster to like hang out on its own and do things, because as we've now beaten to death, they cannot take down shields. Like, they can't reliably take down a Warhound's shields.
Yeah. If they if that's what they're being used for, they are being grossly underutilized for what their intended purpose is.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay for it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because you've just paid 1,000 points to slam 6 strength 11 plasma shots into somebody's shields for 140 points worth of plasma weaponry is just a waste.
I'll say the one thing you can do is put Vulcan mega bolters in the shoulders of the Iconoclast, but because it's so tall and those are such a short range weapon, it's a very small window of opportunity for them to get the work done that they need to.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, I keep wanting to reach for the Apocalypse missile launcher to help solve this. And I think that's why the Warmaster version of the Apocalypse missile launcher is terrible.
Yeah.
Is so that you can't do that. Because for reference, the Apocalypse missile launcher array for the Warmaster is 3 dice for one of them.
Yeah.
So if you dedicate both shoulders to that, you're at a standard Apocalypse missile launcher. And that's real frustrating because it's the only shoulder gun that does that. And I think it's so you can't sit with a paired set of Apocalypse missile launchers and be like, I'll sort it out.
It's its own built-in internal balance, right?
Yeah.
And see, this is where, funny enough, I remember looking at the two, and I remember looking, and again, I stopped asking questions as soon as I saw the size of the chainsword. On the Iconoclast, I remember looking at it and just thinking, this is going to be the inferior pick of the two, because, it's going to get shot at, and, if it wants to charge, you can avoid it. It's not that big. It's going to get picked off, this, that, and the other. But then once we played a few games with it, the first game that I played with it, I was like, this thing needs way less help and way less support. And in fact, it's the reverse. Like, whatever it's with, you don't need to take other stuff to strip shields for it, because it doesn't have knockout guns necessarily. Like, it's not the thing that's going to do the primary damage. In a weird way, all of its shooting can be very complementary to the other Titans that you have. And so it makes it more of a viable target than the support ones, if that makes sense. The Gatling array with 12 shots can take shields down. In the shoulders, I take turbo lasers, because the way that I look at it, I'm like, I can use it for shield bane because you have reactor for days and not worry about it. And I can use the Gatling array if I have to with 12 shots to like really force people to make decisions and start pushing shields and reactors and things like that. And that opens up shots for the other models that are escorting it. And so it's kind of a weird thing. Or if the other ones, if you actually have a Titan that is damaged and shields are down, 12 targeted shots at strength 6 can finish off a Titan if it has to. So it kind of can do it in a weird way. The Iconoclast it's not going to deliver it can deliver the knockout blow up close, and it has a hard time getting there. You're going to have an easier time delivering the knockout blow with the Warmaster, but it just is more flexible. strangely, a dedicated melee Titan is more flexible than the dedicated shooting one. So I think of the two, the Iconoclast is much easier to play, and I think it's a lot more fun to play. But again, when you're playing it in the right setting, like a big team game or something like that, all the downsides of the Warmaster go out the window. And I think in a big team game, like I think they're both a toss up. I think they're both fun, and if you're playing the right game with the right kind of people, it's I think they're going to work out.
Yeah, I think the Iconoclast, that took me by surprise too, because I mean, generally in Titanicus, the especially heavy Titan melee Titans are a little bit of a shtick. You know, the
Mhm.
Claw Lord Warlord Titan is usually more an area denial weapon than it is
Yeah.
you're going to get a charge off.
Right.
And so it sort of took me by surprise that the Iconoclast feels like the more flexible one, does feel like the one that you could toss in a list and be like,
Yeah.
it'll sort itself out.
Yeah.
And so that did take me by surprise. I will say the one thing that they do always deliver is durability.
Yeah.
You know, they are hard to kill and they've got a lot of
Mhm.
shields. And if you're, you know, if you're playing a Legion, like I play Legio Storm, so we also get a reroll for one of the Servitor Clade dice. Uh it's not gonna go down easy. I spent one game at Nova taking, I think, 4 out of the 5 turns, because I think he killed it in the end. But I took no, so it was the last turn where he killed it. I took 5 turns of targeted shots that ignore void shields because it was a Psi Titan to my head, uh, and just like repaired critical hits constantly. And it's got a 4 critical hit track. So I was like, yeah, that's cool. I've apparently got an infinite queue of Moderati I can stick in their positions. As you melt their brains, I just put a new one in. It's fine. So like it just stood there and took it. And it was that and a Warlord, and it was just like, yeah, okay, what else you got?
Yeah.
And so like the durability is there. They are obviously enormous targets, and I think that's where it becomes a problem in small games, is because that durability becomes the only thing you need to shoot at is the Warmaster. And like
Yeah.
it can take a lot. It can't tank everything. And
Yeah.
especially as you start getting outmaneuvered and things are in your side arcs or up under your shields, you know,
Yeah.
you start to lose things. If some, you know, jerk gets a 2 Melta Lance Warhound under your shields, it's still a bad day, even if you're a Warmaster.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some things that are, you know, weak for it, but it is a very durable Titan. Um,
Yeah.
it doesn't go down easy.
Now, counterpoint to it is whenever you go to play one and you look at it, and yes, it does have more space on the damage track. It has a little more armor. But when you compare it points wise to a pair of warlords, I don't think it's even close. You know, as
No.
far as durability
Yeah.
goes, because when you look at it, there's only one more shield on it than a warlord. It doesn't have that much more. It has more reactor, but even when you get into like the damage, and there's one more, you know, spot on the critical track, which is huge. But when you get into like the head, you know, the head on an iconoclast, 13-15 is a direct hit, 13-14 on a warlord. A devastating hit is on a 16, critical on a 17. You go to a warlord, it's 15-16 is a devastating and 17 is a critical. There's not that big of a difference. And when you put the number of shields, and then also between two warlords, you have 8 servitor clades, right? So
Yeah.
you're not the point. Anybody that's getting into the game and wants to get one of these, first of all, just from a model standpoint, 100% get it, paint it,
Just buy one.
love it,
They look good.
live your dream. Don't buy this Titan to learn the game, but just know that you're not buying some sort of an optimized choice. Like you are at a disadvantage playing this Titan, but it's hard to put a points value on fun. And they can be really fun in the right situation, but make sure you're in that situation.
Yeah. I think the key to like 2 warlords is, as you mentioned, first of all, you know, you've got more armor, you've got more shields, you've got more servitor clades with 2 warlords. Also,
Mhm.
your opponent has to shoot at 2 different models.
Yes.
And like, and the, you know, worst case for you is they, you know, power down one of them if they blow up that warlord, you've got a whole second warlord that's still firing.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the Warmaster, if the Warmaster dies, it's dead.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like two warlords will be more durable. And like has a ton of advantages in terms of they can split fire without having an order to split fire because they're two Titans.
Right.
So yeah, I think the key is like you can definitely get a lot of play out of these. They're durable, they're fun. If you're taking a Warmaster, you've got to design your list around it. But yeah, you're buying a cool looking model that's like genuinely starting to threaten the size of a 40k knight in
Yes.
terms of its like position in the world, and it is a chunky Titan. It takes a lot of visual space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're great fun, and they're great fun to paint, and they don't have nearly as much trim as the Warlord, at least in my sort of memory of which one of these I hated more, and the fact that I painted the Warmaster in 2 weeks, and it took me 2 years to summon up the desire to paint the Warlord. So like I think they're a great hobby project. I think they're narratively cool. I think if you're sort of collecting a Legio is like, yeah, this is like this really cool formation of Titans.
Mm-hmm.
That is really good. I think people will be, and I think this is to sort of link back to our previous segment and also this one. I think people will be tempted to use large Titans to flesh out their Legions Imperialis lists to get to Games Workshop's claimed standard game size of 3,000 points. And I think the people who do that are going to lose because I think you can't hold enough objectives as somebody who took 1,000 points in infantry.
Yeah.
And it's just like, cool, all my dudes are dead, but I hold all the objectives, so I win.
Yeah. Man.
So our last question on this is, should you get one? And I think the answer is yes. But then you shouldn't be sad when it only plays a certain way.
Yeah, to me, this is get this after you have 2 warlords already painted.
Yeah.
Like this is it doesn't have to be a capstone piece, because I mean this wasn't the last Titan that I did. I still have 2 warlords to paint, 2 Reavers and a Warbringer. I still have that to go, but the event
you should definitely get
itself.
One. Yeah, I think you should definitely get one. I think it should not be the load-bearing model on your ability to play Titanicus.
Yeah. Have a functional list, then get this thing.
Yeah, that's funny. I was actually going to say it probably should be your capstone Titan, just because you're going to need to have everything to support it. But like from a hobby perspective or just from a collection perspective, like, you know, get it, grab it whenever. But really, this isn't the Titan you start a Maniple or a Legio with. No. This is a nice to have down the road that's going to be fun and unlock some options, and it's more of an experience versus a kind of a direction to build that Legio out in.
How about this? I'm going to get real specific, because you should, when you do Titanicus, you should get 2 starter sets. Get 2 starter sets, paint those, play with those, then get this thing. Because also while you're at it, you're going to want to give that other rule book to another person, because we all know the first one's free, and you got to pass that along. You got to send that out. In fact, there's a listener that I have to mail out my rule book to for my second set tomorrow, who got Titans with the set and was like, wow, I could almost like play a game here. And I was like, oh, send me your address. I got something for you, buddy.
Yeah, this is the grand social contract of Titanicus is when you get a spare Titanicus rulebook, you pass it on.
Absolutely.
And that does good things, because then you end up with more people who are willing to play Titanicus with you.
Yes. So I think that's a good closing point on this, because yes, the more people playing Titanicus, the better the world is. For next time, I believe my bullet note says, who the fuck knows? I will have a repaired knee by the time we go to record again. I know next time, and actually I want to thank, well, I wanted to curse. My wife probably wants to curse, but I want to thank both of you guys because, man, both of you guys were really, Eric, it took 12 episodes for me to cave and finally buy a 3D printer, and Josh, you having the one that I was looking at and giving me all the settings and kind of helping walk me through the lychee slicer program and all that stuff to get things set up. I'm sure I'll have some thoughts on that, and I think going into that too, I think sort of recapping. I hate to just go to the lazy go-to, but man, I think there's a good conversation to have with it. I hate going just to the, hey, how was your 2023? Because for me, 2023 can go die in a fucking fire. The third season of 2020 was absolute bullshit, as you were mentioning, Eric. But I do, for going into the next year, the 3D printer does tie in with some things, and there are some things that I like really learned about myself as a hobbyist that I think are going to help take me in and get my heresy stuff going this year. So we'll have a lot more heresy talk on this on top of 8mm stuff and all that. So well, let's kind of close out from here. If you want to contact us, you can send us an email. And man, I feel bad, somebody sent a thing in October asking about our Discord thing, and I'm just now responding to that now. Should be a quicker turnaround time on that, but losttothenails@gmail.com. You can listen to Josh, of course, over at the Independent Characters. Where else can they, Josh, where is there any other place you post stuff that people are going to find you? Are you an Instagram guy that I don't know about? Or
I do have a secret nerd Instagram account, which I am not prolific about posting, but you'll see a lot more coming there at with Legions Imperialis. That is at Underhive Princeps, which is a little Necromunda and Titanicus specialist games tag there.
Oh,
I hang out in
did
the
you?
Yeah, exactly. Hanging out in your Discord channel. You can always find me there in Titanicus or Legion Imperialis. Independent Characters, Specialist Games is where I primarily lurk over there in Discord, and obviously the Independent Characters Facebook group.
Yeah.
The more polished, more frequent podcast.
Yes. And Eric, tell me.
So
you still got the press game going, correct?
Yep. So I am also part of a second podcast, the Plastic Press Gang podcast, which is all about trying to make historicals somewhat more accessible and somewhat more casual. A lot of, you should do this because it's really cool and not because you care about which color buttons existed during the Italian campaign of 1848. And so it is a podcast that is a little bit more reliable because my co-host Calvin is younger and thus much more keen on like, hey, we need to post this month. So the episode for that just came out, the latest one for that. I'm also on the various social medias still. I'm still on the Hateful Bird site at Variance Hammer. I have been posting more on Variance Hammer. I recently went on a incredibly nerdy deep dive of trying to reverse engineer the points system for a Cold War Goes Hot war game so that I can play the weird Swedish experimental tanks that never saw combat. So yeah, if you think that sounds interesting, there are 4 posts and several regression models about that. And then I'm also on Blue Sky now, also at Variance Hammer. And then I frequent many Discords, including the Lost to the Nails one.
Outstanding. All right, guys. Thanks for giving me an evening or afternoon rather of hobbying and all that stuff. And when we get done here, I'm going under the house to finally set up the 3D printer correctly. I fucked it all up yesterday. And you'll probably have some panic texts coming in at some point. So, but next episode, hopefully we're talking about me recreating the shot in Discord that people had of Mortarion and Angron fighting each other. Hopefully I can recreate that with my own stuff, with my own new shiny bases and all that. And we'll see you guys in hopefully less than 3 months.